Good afternoon, Mrs. Karen Hughes White. How are you today?
I'm well, thank you.
Great, great. Welcome to Lending with Purpose. This is conversations that we have with our clients and our friends, introductions to various forms of information and professionals like yourself, resources that we use. I can't wait to talk about your resource that you've been building or built and that we look for that we never knew existed or wanted to learn more about. So, yeah, thanks again for joining us today.
Thank you for the invitation. I
Oh,
am
no,
honored.
no problem. Like I said before we got started, that if I wouldn't have known Karen, who's your daughter, and she works with us, I honestly may not have found obviously you, but part of your life's work, the stuff that you've been building out in Faulkier County in Virginia. And so I recently uh, uh, got an opportunity a few months ago to come out there and spend a day working with Karen, but also to kind of get a tour of what you built, Ms. Karen. And I think it's amazing. I think it's amazing. More people need to know about it. So I don't have a story today because it's going to be all about you. So
Okay.
can you tell us who you are and what you do, and then we'll get into our conversation.
Yes, okay. I'm Karen Hughes White, as you introduced me. I am a resident of Faulkier County. I was also born in Faulkier County at the segregated hospital in Warrenton. I was educated in Faulkier. I went to nursing school in Washington, D.C. After working in D.C. and Maryland a few years, I returned home around 1978. Around mid 1980s, I started doing my genealogy. I was more or less looking for a hobby at the time, not realizing I really wanted or needed a hobby, but I thought it was something safe for me to do while the children were in school. And from that point, once I picked up a book and located my grandmother's sisters, I knew at that point I wanted to learn more about the family and how we connected to American history, to Virginia history. I wanted to make a positive influence in my children's lives. Met the co-founder of AAHA, Karen King Lavoie, at a mutual cousin's 80th birthday, where we sit in the backyard and shared our work that we were doing in our spare time, only to find out that our families dated generations back into the same community that I grew up in, and that she and her family would visit during the summers. Dating back to 1870, Karen King Lavoie's great grandfather, Henry Welsh, and my great grandfather, Bristow Grigsby, both purchased property from a former slaveholder in Faulkier, William J. Morgan's widow. We found out that our great grandparents, her great grandfather and my great grandmother, both taught at the Morgantown School where my grandmother attended, where my mother attended, and where I too attended. Segregated two-room school when I went, but when my mother and grandmother attended, it was a one-room school. As the story goes on, we found out that our genealogy, which documented our family in time. But the African American story and presence was greater than our small individual stories. And it was a history that we really, really had to research to try to understand. We had to first research all of these various records that were supposed to be available and the meaning of them. I remember one in particular that really perplexed me, where a woman in the loose papers of Faulkier County was brought up on charges for migrating into the Commonwealth contrary to law. And I had no idea what that meant. Only once we found a book published by June Gill back in 1936. It was abstracts to the Acts to the General Assembly, where there was an actual law written that after 1806, emancipated people in the state would have to petition to remain or be removed out of the Commonwealth into a free state. And so we started finding these types of records. Also, I found out that church services and school, first of all, African Americans were not supposed to read or write. Far as church services, they were supposed to be dressed in their best on a Sunday morning and attend a service, but it could only be with a white person overseeing that service, because laws were written to govern and to control the meetings of people together of color, because they found that it was a time that they could plan an insurrection. So I say all this because I'll go down that list for a long ways. But this is what happened. We just started to learn that it was so much that we just didn't know. And I
That was you and your
really,
friend.
yes, Karen King Lavore.
Got it. And so, well, real, I'm gonna let you get back to that. And I apologize for interrupting, but
No, please do.
I just started writing some notes. Thanks for that, because now there's more on my plate that I need to research. But like you mentioned a couple times, books, and you mentioned records and things like that. Where did you find this information? Like, where was it?
Okay, the first thing that I found was a published book in the New Leaf bookstore on Main Street in Warrenton. And the store owner's name was Charlotte. Joan Peters had abstracted the birth index of Faulkier County from the birth register that is housed at the Circuit Court in Warrenton. And in that, my grandmother's two sisters were listed. Their births were listed, but not my great grandmother, not my grandmother. And I had to read the introduction and a little bit of background only to find out the births weren't recorded at that time frame. So most of these records that I was first researching were within the Circuit Court of Warrenton, which is our county seat. So I would go into the record room where I would look at birth, death, marriages, wills, deeds, chancery suits. I could go over to the county library, go into the Virginia Annal Room, and I could access microfilm of the U.S. Census, minute order books, newspapers. If I looked on the shelves in the Virginia Annal Room, which is the historical reference sort of room for the library, there were very few things that were truly related African Americans. I would have to go through other types of records to find one-liners, two sentences pertaining to the African American presence. Like if I looked at a published diary or journal, as I would be reading through that, I would be able to find the African American presence. If I went to the Virginia Historical Society in Richmond, which is now under a different name, but I'm using the names that were relative at that time frame. There were books that had been microfilmed, card files that I would be able to find different things. One of the first things I found at the Virginia Historical Society was Fauquier County's Register of Free Negroes, where in 1793, there was another law that free people were supposed to register at the county clerk's office, and they were supposed to give their name, a description, their age, how they became free, and some more pertinent information such as that. And it would be, they would have to certify, someone would have to certify that they were indeed free or how they became free. So with that, that was I guess my first introduction to a very hard book that was hurtful to me. because these registers had descriptions and different things in them that I felt to be very demeaning to a person, that they had to have this type of record to even move around to carry that pass, because that book, that register, would then entitle them to a pass that they would have to carry with them. And that pass, whatever that description was, had to mimic their body. It had to represent them. So I left out and I went to the car for a little bit to regroup and trying to find an ounce of something positive within this experience. I realized that at least I would have a description that I wouldn't have had before. And I realized that this pass would be serving the same purpose as a learner's or a driver's permit, a permit to walk or move or to drive.
Oh
When
wow.
you're stopped by the patrollers or their slave catchers, you'd have to have that pass with you so you wouldn't be locked up or put in jail or sold south. So
And all this was in Virginia, in Faulkier
yes,
County.
yes,
Got and how
yes,
much?
every county.
Oh, go. Apologize. Go ahead.
Yeah, every county. This was a Virginia law. So every county was supposed to have a register, but they're not a lot that have been located at this point, even though they should have been housed at the county clerk's office.
Understood. How much time did you because it sounds like it started off as I mean, you didn't say hobby, but it was just something to do that you were intrigued by, but then I'm sure as you got more and more involved in it and intrigued, you crawled down a rabbit hole, right?
Many rabbit holes. And now by 1992, the co-founder,
Yes.
because this was her, she came up with this,
So you
that we
blame
should
her, huh?
form under the National Afro-American Historical and Genealogical Society. And the national chapter, they were in DC. And we had met with these ladies and gentlemen and had a wonderful relationship with them. And at this time frame, this was new waters for Faulkier residents, and there was a little bit of hesitancy to join or to start gathering a $15 membership fee. Our membership fee actually started at $2.50, and most of our members were older members. And these people wanted to tell their stories and to be able to leave their stories behind. Many of the people that were still working in Faulkier were concerned that we may start up trouble by talking about family history and the history of African Americans, because some people were still working in the homes of descendants of former slaveholders, and they didn't want to rock the boat, so to say, or feel like they were jeopardizing their livelihood. And I didn't fully understand that. I could to a certain extent, but not fully. But as time goes on, I learned to understand the delicacies and the history behind that feeling. And it's very clear to understand it if you are able to look at the Freedmen's Bureau papers in Faulkier, pertaining to Faulkier County. When after the war was over, and former landholders were now needing labor, and former enslaved people were looking for jobs to be able to sustain their families. Well, the Freedmen's Bureau helped draw up labor contracts between the two people, the two groups. And we found letters written to the Freedmen's Bureau of atrocities upon people of color once they wanted to vote, where their labor contracts were pulled, where they were taking children in to teach them trades and refusing parents' rights to visit, and atrocities against starting churches, where other churches gave letters of dismissal from the white churches, African American memberships from the white churches to the black churches. So you always have a mixed bag of people, of who's supportive and who's not supportive of the African American presence. Like during the March on Washington, we had some people that employed many people in the county that provided transportation to the 1960s March in Washington, where others discouraged people that were working from them for them to even attend the march. So it's always people sitting on different sides of the fence.
Understood. Let's so you spoke about the March on Washington and in the 1960s, fair housing, Fair Housing Act. If I'm not mistaken, it was 1968, around that time frame. And so, what was it like then, like in regards to housing? So number one, I know you've been a homeowner for a while, and but also I'm sure your research has allowed you to find some information about that as well. Like so, do you have any feedback about like how we were affected back then, like in regards to the fair
Mo- to be honest with you, most of my research, I have gone in different periods in time. The first part of our research was totally during the era of slavery
housing?
in 1870 up to about 1900, because that was the where what we considered the most at risk stories. So we tried to document that. The little bit of things that I can address are small instances of people relaying messages of uh, attempting to secure loans for houses that were denied. I went through segregation and integration in Faulkier County. Uh, I do know of people that built homes on private family properties without the overseeing of permits and things as stringent as they are now, where they had the permits, but it wasn't as detailed as it is now. And I do and have seen property, a great deal of it, where it has gone down through heirs without proper wills and deeds, and with a title being clouded. And time it is researched to find out all the heirs, the property is sold for taxes for non-payment, and the heirs basically end up with nothing to really show for it.
Understood. And then so like in
And
regard, oh, go ahead.
and then I have seen in the records where some property is never to be, where people were selling property, but it was not to be sold to a person of color ever. So I've seen these types of records. I have not pulled those records as a placeholder in time. And I kind of regret as I found them that I didn't pull them at the time, but that wasn't my focus at the time, not realizing that that would be a time when I want to focus on that part of it. It just shows how much of the history is there, of where you can just walk through and see people at different time frames going through everything.
That's another rabbit hole for you to crawl down.
It's so many rabbit holes, and life is so short. Life is so short.
Yes, man. So let's talk about the actual the museum. Obviously we have been, and you told us how you got to that point.
Yeah.
So where is it located? Like
Oh,
it's very impressive location too. For all that are listening. When we have the History Museum in Washington D.C. Excuse me, but like what Ms. Karen, that I call her, has pulled together is very impressive. And so tell us about the actual museum, what we should, how we
okay.
get there, what should we look for and expect to see when we get walk inside those doors.
Okay. First of all, the Resource Center contains a reference library, So if you're looking at a theme in history, you'll be able to go in there and to sit and actually pick up a book or a journal and to read. But we also have a research library. So for the local historians or family historians or genealogists, you'll be able to go into that room and you can search our databases, which is stored on, one is stored in Past Perfect Online, which is a museum software that we've been using since around 2000, 2001. So it catalogs our archival files, our photographs. It keeps up with our memberships, our objects, and even our library books. So we'll know where they are and what we actually have. And then if you're walking into the building, you have the opportunity to go on that first level to those offices and the library, or you're able to go down the stairs to the auditorium, which seats roughly 90 to 100 people, or to go into the museum. Once you enter the museum, you're going to enter into a time of history, starting with Africa, going around to Jamestown, and into what we call the footprints of freedom. So you're looking at the American Revolution, and you're looking at the, excuse me, the first Africans in 1619. And then we're going to kind of fast forward into 1759 when Faulkier formed out of Prince William. And from that point, we're using primary source documents from Faulkier County to tell that story of footprints to freedom, where on one side, you're able to look at, let's say, the revolution into slavery and politics with the different congressmen debating the delegates debating the institution of slavery, or looking at the Northwest Ordinance or the Missouri Compromise. You're looking at resistance to slavery by flight with the Underground Railroad, the people that's freedom seekers, or you're looking at the abolitionists or the resistors with insurrections. And then you're walking into a time frame where you can look at the Free Negro Registers, the runaway ads, Harper's Weekly newspapers pertaining to John Brown's raid, the Harriet Beecher Stowe's book, into the Civil War, Reconstruction, voting, and then right into the heart with the communities, the churches, the schools, the families. And it's done in a timeline to where when you get around to 1900, you're going to look at things that was happening in the county, in the state, with the negative imaging. And Jim Crow at its best, but at the same time, you're looking at actual cabinet cards of distinguished African Americans that were printed. You're looking at the period of the Renaissance, migration, and then it goes on around to civil rights, and the families continue. And on the outskirts of it, you're going to look at Blacks in the military. And that's how we have it set up.
Yeah, excuse me. Yeah, it's awesome to see. And then so, what kind of support have you gotten from the community? Because I know, you when I spoke to you when I was there, you were saying that folks have donated artifacts and
Yes.
records and papers and such. So,
Yeah.
like for those that do support, what have they been able to do to help?
Okay. First of all, when we formed, part of our mission was to have a museum, but I was thinking the museum would kind of be in each little community. Maybe the churches would have a room with their history in it that would pertain to the community, the family, the church's school. But little did I know that the community said no. They said, we want everything here and we're going to bring things in. So they started bringing in photographs, family keepsakes like Bible records, certificates from graduations, funeral programs, obituaries, all types of things. So we have every type of record that the county court would have. We have some of those. We have abstracts or copies of those. in our archival file. And we also have about 40 oral histories that we have taken, 20 that were done around 2018, and the others were done between 2001 and 2002. So we have a good sense of the voices of Faulkier County. But it's, it's, um, it's unique in the sense that we have documents that are scanned, but that are more, that some of them aren't scanned, but they're indexed to where you can do keyword searches. So if someone is in Los Angeles or Canada and they have Faulkier County roots, they can go to AAHAFaulkier.org and do a keyword search. They can search our databases online. And we are currently working on a project called Know Their Names. We want to know the names of people that lived in Faulkier County, people of color, either free and or enslaved people, because many times the enslaved were only listed as slave, boy, girl, male, female, or with a value, and or some other type of description, a blacksmith. So we want to add as many names as we can to try to understand and to give the humanity back to these people that were the builders of the foundation in which we stand today, to be able to acknowledge it. We have many landholders in Faulkier County today that wish to acknowledge the presence of the people that built churches that they attend. Um, to be able to put some type of monument to these rock markers that's out in the fields that they feel that are slave cemeteries. And when they're researching, they can only find a first name or either no name. And they're concerned and they want to show that they understand their family's past history, but they don't want that type of history to continue. They want to show respect to those that were once there, that afforded them the opportunities that they have today on that land.
Oh, thank you for that. How can we help you, Mrs. Karen? Like what do you need? First part of that question, and then last piece, how do we find you at? You just gave the website, so I'm assuming that's the best way. But what do you all need?
We always need support, whether it be volunteers or visitors or well wishes or monetary. On the website, you can always do donations. We're open Tuesdays and Wednesdays from 10 to 3. Our address is 4243 Loudon Avenue, and it's in the Plains, Virginia, which is about an hour from DC. 66 West will get you there, get you to us.
Yeah.
And we're always open for conversation and for understanding. And if by chance you have a connection to Faulkier County, let us hear from you. Let us know if you've done your family research. Share that information with us. That part is so wonderful because we've had over the years people that have come in to research their family history, and that helps to create the family files of Faulkier County. And as the files are generated, it leaves a footprint and a foundation for the next researcher to build upon with many links. So that part is a wonderful to be able to have people assist with that. And on the second Tuesday and the second and fourth Tuesday of each month at 1 o'clock, we're having a series called Local History and Genealogy. And Christine Taylor Lewis is our host for those events. And they are local people that have either been researching a person, place, or thing, or family member, genealogy, or a site. Sometimes it's thematic periods that people topics that people have researched, and they're coming in and they're doing that Zoom. So it's very meaningful. But they'll be on our Facebook page as well as on YouTube, and it's all AAHA Faulkier.
Thank you. This is been very humbling, and it's been a great experience getting an opportunity to speak with you because, like I said, I've heard, Karen tell me stories about how it got started, and I wanted to hear from you, and, and that's why I kind of shut up and made sure that I allowed you to talk with this, and so I want to be really respectful of your time, so I won't hold you much longer, but Ms. Karen, I really appreciate you taking the time to tell us about what you've been able to do, like in regards to that and why it was important to you and important to us in our community. And then I could just only imagine like how far that might reach. Like you mentioned, if you're in, another country or another state, there are potentially some roots that go back to these counties and these small towns in Virginia. So thanks for pulling that together. I'm not even gonna ask you what's next for you, so don't even answer it. But that we'll have another conversation about that when we see each other again. But
Okay.
like I tell everybody, it'd be such a shame to have these relationships like yourself, and access to the resources and just keep it a secret. And so thank you again for joining us. Before I let you go, you're not gonna get away with answering this question that I have for you, Mr. Karen. So so one person, one question, who would it be and what would you ask? One person, one question, who would it be and what would you ask?
That is so hard.
It's not fair, is it?
No, it's
You only
not.
get one though. You could give me one. I know you got thousands of them, but you can give me one.
I think I would ask Amanda Smith. Uh, when did she come into Virginia and how? We have an oral history that she came over on a boat from Africa. And I found her in the 1870 census, but I don't know anything else about her. And that would be my grandfather's grandmother on my mother's side. She lived in the community of Asheville. She was married to a man by the name of Elijah Smith. And on one of the death records of one of the children, they list her as Amanda Berry. And I do know that there were berries in the area, but I don't know whether they connect with her or not. So Amanda would be the person that I would be looking for. My grandmother, my mother's first cousin or cousin, and my daddy's cousin both shared this particular cousin. And she gave us the oral history that Manda was someone when she was so kind and so sweet. Where our other grandmother that we shared, our great grandmother, said she was a stickler. She was very, very strict. She was a school teacher. So I want to learn more about Amanda.
Oh, thanks for that. I just quickly looked up Amanda Berry Smith. Yep, I just
Hmm.
Methodist preacher. Yep, and former slave. Thank you, Mrs. Karen. So everybody,
Okay.
this has been great. Please do what you can to take a look at AAHA Faulkier.org. If I or we can do anything to help you, don't hesitate to reach out. Continue to stay as safe and as healthy as possible. And
Thank you.
we'll see everybody next week. But thanks again, Mrs. Karen, and I'll be seeing you soon.
All righty. Thank you so much. Goodbye, everyone.